to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you with all the top stories from around the globe. Let's begin with a story that is hogging global headlines, and with good reason. President Vladimir Putin today spent close to 5 hours with North Korean leader Kim Jong Un at Russia's most modern space rocket launch site amid the forests of eastern Russia. We're talking about the Vostochny Cosmodrome. More about the significance of this occasion a little later on the show. President Putin has said Russia would help North Korea launch satellites, and Kim Jong Un has said Moscow has his full backing in its sacred fight, as he put it, with the West. Before the talks, Putin said, "We will discuss all issues," when asked if the two leaders would talk about getting supplies from the north to replenish Moscow's dwindling stock of weapons and ammunition. When reporters asked whether Russia would help Kim build satellites, Putin said quite plainly, "That's why we came here." The leader of the Democratic People's Republic of Korea shows great interest in rocket engineering. They are also trying to develop space programs, Putin said. At the opening of the summit with Putin at the gleaming new space station, Kim said it was North Korea's unwavering position to further develop its traditional friendship and ties with Russia. He said, and I quote, "I find it an honor that the president has found an opportunity to meet at a special environment at the launch station, which is the heart of your position as a space superpower, and given us a deep understanding of the way forward." Kim also told Putin that he had his full backing in the sacred fight that Moscow is waging against the hegemonic forces. He said, "We will always support the decisions of President Putin and the Russian leadership, and we will be together in this fight against imperialism." The summit between the leaders of the two countries, which have become increasingly isolated internationally, is being watched very closely by Washington and its allies, who suspect they could agree to trade arms and defense technology. US and South Korean officials have expressed concern that Kim would provide weapons and ammunition to Russia, which has expended vast stocks in more than 18 months of war in Ukraine. Now, the choice to meet at Vostochny Cosmodrome, a symbol of Russia's ambitions as a space power, is noteworthy as North Korea has failed twice to launch reconnaissance satellites in the last 4 months. Kim has made it a top priority to launch a spy satellite, while pushing his nuclear-armed country to step up the development of ballistic missiles, drone attack submarines. And ahead of his meeting with Putin, Kim signed the visitor book in Korean, saying, "The glory to Russia, which gave birth to the first space conquerors, will be immortal." Television footage shows Putin giving Kim a tour of the facility, including the building where the Angara, Russia's new space launch rocket, is assembled. The 42.7-meter booster launches payloads into the low Earth orbit. The promised Russian aid comes as North Korea's scientists have vowed to try another launch of the new Kolima-1 booster in October. The US and its allies have called North Korea's latest satellite tests clear violations of the UN Security Council resolutions that prohibit the development of technology applicable to North Korea's ballistic missiles programs. United Nations resolutions passed with Russia's support also ban any scientific and technical cooperation with North Korea in nuclear science and technology, aerospace and aeronautical engineering and technology, and advanced manufacturing production techniques and methods. North Korea has said its space program and defense activities are its sovereign right. Shortly before the summit, North Korea in fact launched 2 short-range ballistic missiles from an area near the capital Pyongyang into the sea off its eastern coast. It was the first such launch by the North while Kim was abroad, demonstrating an increased level of delegation and more refined control systems for the country's nuclear and missile programs. After the summit, Putin and Kim had lunch on crab dumplings, sturgeon and beef with Russian wine, where Kim proposed a toast to Putin's health and said he was confident that the Russian army and people would triumph against evil, as he put it. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the two countries cooperate in sensitive areas, including military cooperation, but it is not targeted at other countries and they should not be concerned about Russia's ties with North Korea. Kim Jong Un arrived in Russia by a private, heavily armored luxury train with top defense industry and military aides, and said his visit highlighted the strategic significance of the ties between the two countries. The makeup of Kim's delegation, with the notable presence of Munitions Industry Department Director, suggests an agenda heavy on defense industry cooperation. Now, there has been speculation that Kim may have offered artillery rounds from North Korea's large stockpile, which could replenish Russia's capabilities in the short term. The questions about the ammunition's quality may limit the overall impact, according to some military analysts. South Korea and the United States have warned that such a deal would violate UN Security Council resolutions, which Russia, as a permanent member of the Council, voted to approve. North Korea is one of the few countries to have openly supported Russia over the Ukraine conflict, and Putin pledged last week to expand bilateral ties in all respects in a planned way by pooling efforts. All right, let's go across to Shri at this point. He joins us live from Washington, D.C. Shri, clearly you are watching this meeting very, very closely. Of course, apart from what they ate, tell us, what do you think happened in that meeting? Have they struck a major arms deal that the US, South Korea and Japan as well as Ukraine need to worry about?
So, Neha, clearly a whole lot of bromance being put on display at the Vostochny Cosmodrome. So let's break it down for our viewers. So, as everyone will remember, this is the second time that Kim is actually visiting Vladivostok to meet with Putin. The last time was in 2019. Now, last time when he met him, it pretty much he walked back home or, came back home with really nothing in his hands. In fact, the press briefing that happened after the two met was done alone by Putin. So Kim was clearly very unhappy with the fact that he had not got anything the last time around. So now we have to ask what has changed from the last time to this time. I think there's only one major factor. Putin this time really needs Kim. So that's one thing which has changed, and that changes the whole equation. So why does Putin need Kim at this point? Obviously, because of the war that's going on in Ukraine and the fact that Russia is now running low on its ammunition, especially artillery shells, to keep fighting the war. Now, according to some estimates, Russia has spent or fired more than, almost 10 to 11 million kind of shells in the Ukraine war last year. And that annual production capacity is only 2 million, Neha. So what happens is, he's fast depleting the reserves of shells that he has, and he quickly needs it to fill it up. Now, obviously, Russia is going to try and jack up its own production, but I think best estimate is they'll do about 2 million a year. So there's a lot of gap still if Putin has to keep up the war. Now, that said, Neha, until, the Ukraine war, Putin was very happy to allow North Korea to be in the sphere of influence of China. So in fact, North Korea was almost a satellite country of China. And that's an arrangement that has worked very well for China and Russia. So, while a lot of people are saying, are reading too much into it, I would like to caution that China is still a very important part of the equation. I said this yesterday, and I repeat myself, that China, anything that's struck between Putin and Kim has to be done with the blessing of China, at least overt or covert kind of a blessing from China, because China is still the dominant partner, and even Russia, needs China, which is far bigger than it is, and China is also potentially capable of giving Russia, Putin, the arms that it needs in case things become bad with the Western countries and the European countries as far as China is concerned. So, and that's also the reason, Neha, to my mind, why the two leaders have stopped short of actually any kind of signing a deal, which is like on paper. There's a lot of talk from Putin, a lot of talk from Kim. Putin's, of course, dangled a lot of carrot in front of Kim by impressing him, showing what potentially could be accessible to Kim. The fact that he brought him to Cosmodrome and he saw the space capabilities of Russia and the way Kim was looking, you could tell that he's going to go back home and ask his scientists, why aren't we as good as them? Or what can we borrow from them? So, so Putin is going to engage Kim to the extent that he needs him right now for the war. And that's going to be a very smart play because Putin's a very, very shrewd and sharp, leader. So he's not going to give Kim everything he wants, but he's going to keep that promise open to Kim of a larger, engagement, like they've been saying, Kremlin has been saying. This is a bilateral relation that we're trying to develop with our neighbors, so everything's on the table. Obviously, they're going to say that, but how much of that actually fructifies? How much of it translates into something tangible in the hands of Pyongyang, Kim, is a totally different issue. But for the time being, I think Putin has laid out the red carpet for him, made him feel very good, and basically told him that we are there, we're going to help you. How much of that happens is a different question, Neha. It all depends on China's blessing, what US is able to do in the meantime by putting some pressure on China, because I think China is probably the only influence at this stage which is going to, which US, that's the only lever which US can pull to influence both Russia and North Korea. So China will remain an important factor in this whole equation, Neha.
Absolutely. You have been saying since yesterday that this summit couldn't have taken place without the blessings of China. But since we've been focusing so much on the trade-off, the quid pro quo that is likely, as a result of this summit, I want to ask you this specific question, Sri. We've been talking about how Russia has depleted its stocks of ammunition in the last 18 months of its war against Ukraine. It desperately needs to replenish those stocks, and Kim could in fact come to Putin's rescue in that respect. The question that arises, and that's something you've referred to, is what's in it for Kim and North Korea. Now, it is no secret that Kim Jong Un wants nuclear technology. Another thing that he seems to be obsessed with is putting spy satellites into orbit, right? North Korea has failed twice in its attempts in the last 4 months, but they're going to give it another shot in the month of October. Now, if that is what Kim is looking for, how is Russia going to walk the tightrope, given that, sharing any kind of nuclear technology or aerospace technology with North Korea would mean that Russia then falls foul of the UN Security Council resolutions. And at a time when it's already under so much international pressure, having, faced so many sanctions from the West, is that a risk Putin can take?
Well, the reality is he's already been sanctioned by the West. He's getting isolated. So it's a risk he's willing to take. But now coming to specifics, Neha, with anything which is like, military equipment, hardware, or any significant technology, it's not a question of that, you decide to give one country some technology and from next day they start using it. No, it doesn't work like that. It takes years, even decades for a technology to be adopted, to be, for them to develop capabilities to be able to use it properly. So even if, let's say, it comes to the crunch and Kim pushes Putin to say, okay, what are you putting on the table? Show me. Putin might, put a few things on the table, and they might even, start helping North Korea, but they will stretch it. They'll make sure that, that this technology is made accessible only to them, only when Russia wants it to. Until that time, it'll just be like, two people meeting, having conversations, the usual stuff that, countries do when they don't want to, basically cheese each other off. But so that's the thing which I think Putin will do most likely, Neha. He's going to stretch this even if it comes to that. Meanwhile, I think we need to see what is US going to do and what are the European countries going to do about this. What kind of pressure is going to be brought on China to make sure, because any arms deal that happens will be in violation of the UN resolution, and both China and Russia are signatories to those very resolutions. So can they justify, doing this sort of a deal when they themselves have signed on to these resolutions against North Korea in specific? But one thing I can tell you, I think Kim is not in a mood to, back down on his nuclear ambition. That is very clear. I think the US had an opportunity, in 2019, 2018. But now I think he's gone way beyond any kind of, to walk back from his nuclear ambitions, Neha.
Right. Well, so how is the US going to deal with this situation is a million-dollar question. And in all humility, in my view, another million-dollar question was, Shri, how were the crab dumplings and sturgeon that Putin and Kim ate? And I was hoping you'd give us some scoop on that, some details. Unfortunately, none have been forthcoming. But on that note, let's move on to another story that we have for our viewers on this high-profile Kim-Putin meeting. Let's tell you about the significance of the site chosen for the Putin-Kim summit. The choice to meet at Vostochny Cosmodrome, a symbol of Russia's ambitions as a space power, is not without meaning, as North Korea has twice failed to launch reconnaissance satellites in the past 4 months. I'm glad to see you. This is our new Cosmodrome, Putin said as he welcomed Kim at the Vostochny Cosmodrome, a modern space launch facility in the Amur region of Russia's Far East. Television footage shows Putin giving Kim a tour of the facility, including the building where Russia's new space rocket launch is assembled. The 42.7-meter booster launches payloads into low Earth orbit. This Cosmodrome, which came into service in 2016, is in the Amur region, as we said, of Russia's Far East, not far from the Russian border with China and about 1,500 kilometers from the port of Vladivostok. Now, in English, this name means Eastern Cosmodrome. Putin ordered the construction of the Cosmodrome to reduce reliance on the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan, which gained independence after the 1991 collapse of the Soviet Union. There was once a Soviet intercontinental ballistic missile base known as Swobodny 18, I think I got the pronunciation wrong, just a few kilometers from the Vostochny complex. That base shut down in 1993. So why is this location significant for this meeting? Holding talks with Kim Jong Un, who has been cast by former US President Donald Trump as the rocket man at Vostochny, puts a spotlight on Western concerns about the development of North Korea's missile capabilities. North Korea's latest Hwasong-18 intercontinental ballistic missile, its first ICBM to use solid rocket fuel, has reignited debate over possible Russian links to the nuclear-armed state's dramatic missile development. Vostochny cost billions of dollars, giving a boost to the local economy, but construction was mired in delays and corruption scandals. The first launch was in 2016 when a Soyuz-2 rocket blasted off from here. The most recent launch was the Soyuz rocket carrying the ill-fated Luna 25 moon spacecraft that crashed into the moon. Let's go back to Shri for more on this story. Shri, you know, the location that was chosen for this summit is laden with symbolism, isn't it? You know, I mean, are Kim and Putin together really cocking a snook at the West by holding their talks here?
No, absolutely, Neha. I mean, one of the things which Putin is going to do is, use Kim as someone he can use to constantly cock a snook at at US and Europe in particular. So that's very evident from what's going on right now. He himself may not, cross a certain limit, but he'll be very happy to use Kim, who anyway has a reputation for being totally unpredictable and unreliable, and he doesn't answer to anyone. So, and Kim is a man who doesn't have anything to lose. People in North Korea may ask him, okay, what about food and basics when we are suffering with such crushing poverty and shortage of food? He's probably going to turn back and say that, how dare you question me on those issues when I'm actually trying to take this country into a nuclear age. So that's going to be his justification. And the location was chosen, to my mind, very, very smartly so that Kim could be dazzled, so that he could see what was capable of, what Russia is capable of, and what North Korea could potentially get if it gave Russia what it wanted. Not that it may end up getting it. I would caution that again. But these are all, it's like, taking Kim into a high-tech, a toy shop. And Putin is showing, okay, there's all the fun stuff, all the cool cars, all the cool gadgets I have. And, it's going to be, really, really impressive from Kim's perspective. And he's going to get really excited about what North Korea could potentially get. So I think the location was chosen for a very strategic reason, knowing that Kim truly loves, stuff which is like nuclear, space, all the high-tech stuff, which North Korea desperately wants to escape from its image as a dirt poor country, which is like basically struggling. It's a $20 billion economy where it's only poverty and nothing else.
Well, it's not for nothing that Donald Trump gave Kim the sobriquet of being the rocket man, and now he seems to take it very seriously, given the number of missile tests that he's conducted just in the last couple of years. Stay on with us, Shri. We want to now move on to our next story, and this is about the Russian president as well. On Tuesday, Russian President Vladimir Putin lavished praise on India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi for his Make in India initiative. Speaking at the 8th Eastern Economic Forum in Vladivostok, Putin commended India's efforts to promote domestically made automobiles. He said Prime Minister Modi is doing the right thing in promoting the Make in India program. This endorsement comes as a testament to the success of India's manufacturing policies under Prime Minister Modi's government. Putin also emphasized the importance of using Russian-made automobiles in the country, highlighting that it aligns with WTO obligations and can streamline logistics. Putin said, "We did not have domestically made cars then, but we do now. It is true that they look more modest than Mercedes or Audi cars, which we bought in vast amounts in the 1990s, but this is not an issue. I think we should emulate many of our partners, for instance, India. They are focused on the manufacture and use of Indian-made vehicles. I think Prime Minister Modi is doing the right thing in promoting the Make in India program. He is right." Prime Minister Modi launched the Make in India campaign back in 2014 with the aim of attracting investment, fostering innovation, enhancing skill development, safeguarding intellectual property and building world-class manufacturing infrastructure. The Make in India initiative is based on 4 pillars, as the government puts it, to give a boost to entrepreneurship in India, not only in manufacturing but also in other sectors. Meanwhile, the Russian president also talked about the India-Middle East-Europe economic corridor and expressed his support for it, saying it would benefit Russia by developing logistics. The IMEC project gained global attention when India, the United States, the UAE, Saudi Arabia, France, Germany, Italy and the European Union signed a memorandum of understanding during the recent G20 summit in New Delhi. This initiative aims to establish a massive shipping and railway connectivity corridor, fostering economic integration between India, South Asia and Europe. Putin, interestingly, said, "I believe this will only benefit us. This will help us develop logistics. This project has been discussed for a long time, for several years now." That's what he said. Okay, going back to Shri for more on this story. Shri, first, the praise that's been lavished by Putin on Prime Minister Modi. Of course, it is no secret that the two leaders share excellent relations. Even when it became clear that Putin would not be traveling to New Delhi for the G20 summit, he personally made a phone call to convey that to Prime Minister Modi. But what do you make of, his praise for the Prime Minister's Make in India initiative? I wonder, is he praising the Make in India initiative or is he thanking Prime Minister Modi for the New Delhi leader's declaration?
See, I think the fact, Neha, is that the Prime Minister of India today, Mr. Narendra Modi, has achieved global recognition for the way he has conducted the affairs of the country, both inside and outside in terms of the foreign policy. So there are a lot of global leaders who are, openly appreciative of Mr. Modi and his leadership. And there are some others who only grudgingly appreciate what he's done. But the fact remains that he is winning respect and laurels from pretty much every corner of the world. That's, I think, not in doubt anymore. Now, coming back specifically to the Make in India reference that Putin made, this is obviously, it predates, the COVID crisis and the disruption which it caused. But I think that was a seminal moment in global history and in terms of global businesses, where countries realize that you cannot be overtly dependent on one country for all your manufacturing needs. For example, China. China has been the world's manufacturing, hub. So every little thing comes from China for most part of the world, certainly here in the US. That's something which every country has recognized, especially when it comes to semiconductors. So even for high-tech items and low-tech items, countries are looking for ways to basically de-risk do at least at minimum a China plus one strategy where, while they scale down their engagement with China as a manufacturing hub, they also alternatively set up newer destinations, newer bases where their products can be manufactured. And a lot of them are actually trying to bring back manufacturing within their own borders into their own countries. So that is a significant shift and shift that's happening. And that's something which, Mr. Putin's remark points to. In fact, that's something which Mr. Putin himself has done for very different reasons. He had anticipated that as he annexed Crimea in 2014, that there will be a greater response from West and Europe to his actions. Therefore, he had started building domestic capabilities. So a few days ago, we were discussing the apparent prosperity of Russians despite the war going on. So one of the reasons why Russia has been able to absorb the shock much better is because of the domestic capabilities that the economy has built, especially in food production and also local manufacturing. So this is, in some sense, a vindication not only of Mr. Modi's leadership and the way India is conducting itself today on the global stage and within its own borders, but it's also a reminder that probably globalization as a concept is probably on the wane, and now countries are going to look more and more about their own interests and less of collaboration and do what is right for themselves, which means trying and doing as many things on their own, at least all the critical components of their economy within their own borders, Neha. So this is an indicative of that also, apart from obviously the complement at the surface level.
Right. One more question on this, Sri, before we move on to the next story. It's very interesting that Putin has expressed support for the India-Middle East-Europe Economic Connectivity Corridor. This project, as we know, was launched during the G20 summit in New Delhi over the weekend. Many are saying it is going to rival China's Belt and Road Initiative. We know that Russia is a very close friend of China's, and also this project has the blessings of Russia's bitter adversary, the United States. But how do you view Putin's remarks when he says it's great, it's going to even help us?
So I think that's the businessman and in Putin who's speaking. Obviously, this is meant to be a rival to China's Belt and Road Initiative, and this will truly transform. Although the details are not yet being put out, we know that this is a historic, transformative kind of a plan which has been hammered out, among the European, Middle Eastern and India with the support of US. And this was announced outside of the G20 summit. But the very fact that it was done at that moment indicates the importance of this. So this is going to be a corridor which it's a rail, a seaport corridor with undersea cable. So we'll have not just energy and other, manufacturing hubs, green energy also happening along this corridor, Neha, but there'll also be a lot of a technology component to it in terms of an undersea cable, which is going to enable faster communication and data transfer and many other technological collaboration and cooperation in this corridor. So there is no doubt that this is going to be a huge boon for the countries which are going to participate in this corridor. And as a country which is pretty much, the largest country in the world, Russia. So it is like, going to benefit. It shares border with, China. It shares border with Europe. So it's going to be a beneficiary of this as well. So I think this is a very calculated kind of welcome which Mr. Putin has made, obviously keeping in mind that there will be significant economic benefits that his own country will be able to reap in terms of, the integration that happens with markets.
Well, that is very interesting, the shrewd man that Putin is. All right, let's now move on to our next story, Sri, which is from the United States of America. And well, what else can it be if not about the 2024 presidential election? Now, as the 2024 presidential campaign hots up in the US, the gloves seem to be coming off. Republican Kevin McCarthy, who's the Speaker of the US House of Representatives, has announced a formal impeachment inquiry against President Joe Biden, claiming that a culture of corruption surrounding the president has been unearthed. It's not clear, though, what months of Republican investigations have actually revealed and whether there is in fact any concrete evidence of misconduct by President Biden. McCarthy said these are allegations of abuse of power, obstruction and corruption, and they warrant further investigation by the House of Representatives. The inquiry is said to focus on allegations of improper business dealings involving the president's son, Hunter Biden. A House Oversight Committee memorandum from early August claimed that evidence suggested the Biden family and their associates received more than $20 million from foreign sources. Now, a report in the Washington Post recently said that according to their investigation, only $7 million went to Biden family members, mostly Hunter, while the rest went to associates, but no specific payments were made to President Biden, or at least could be identified. The inquiry also questions Joe Biden's involvement in his son's business dealings. Former business partner Devon Archer has said Biden was put on speakerphone with potential business associates, but clarified that these were casual conversations that never discussed Hunter Biden's business dealings. A Democrat-aligned watchdog group, the Congressional Integrity Project, says it found no evidence of any conflict of interest on Biden's part. Republicans, on the other hand, have raised concern about an unverified tip to the FBI claiming Biden pressured the Ukrainian government to fire a prosecutor to halt an investigation into Ukrainian energy firm Burisma, the company whose board had Hunter Biden as a member. An FBI document detailing the claim was obtained and released by Republican Senator Chuck Grassley. However, the Justice Department investigated the claim for 8 months during the Trump administration and ultimately abandoned its probe due to insufficient evidence. The former CEO of this company also rebutted the claim. House Republicans have suggested the Justice Department interfered in an investigation into Hunter Biden's tax returns based on testimony from 2 IRS whistleblowers. However, other witnesses called by Republican representatives testified that neither President Biden nor Attorney General Merrick Garland interfered in the investigation. The Justice Department has altogether denied these claims that are being made by the Republicans. In his announcement of the impeachment inquiry, McCarthy referenced alleged communications between Biden's staff members and Hunter Biden's team regarding media responses from Burisma. The House Oversight Committee cited an email from Eric Schwerin, a Biden family business associate, to an Office of the Vice President staff member. According to the committee, the email contained the quotes that the White House should use in response to media outreach regarding Hunter Biden's role in this company. The White House has dismissed these allegations as part of a wild goose chase. Now, even as this impeachment inquiry unfolds, the allegations of corruption against President Biden and his family remain highly contested, with the Democrats questioning the validity of these claims. The White House, too, has reacted sharply, terming this move a witch hunt to impede President Biden's 2024 re-election campaign. And let's not forget, the Senate needs to give its clearance too for any impeachment proceedings against the president to go ahead, and that is highly unlikely as the Senate is controlled by the Democrats, unlike the House, where the Republicans have a majority.
That's why today I am directing our House committee to open a formal impeachment inquiry into President Joe Biden. This logical next step will give our committees the full power to gather all the facts and answers for the American public. That's exactly what we want to know, the answers. I believe the president would want to answer these questions and allegations as well.
Okay, let's go back to Shri to understand the political implications of this development. Now, the fact, Shri, that, the presidential race is hotting up is obviously quite evident. But, this is, of course, not the first time that there is talk of a U.S. president possibly facing impeachment. We've seen U.S. presidents face impeachment in the past, but nobody's ever been removed from office through an impeachment procedure. However, the bigger question here with regard to Biden is this. Number one, can they really go ahead with impeachment proceedings against Biden, given that the Senate is controlled by the Democrats? And number two, the evidence that the Republicans keep referring to, What is that evidence all about? Where is that evidence? Because as one media report after another from America seems to suggest that there was an inquiry by the Justice Department under the Trump administration lasting several months that was actually unable to unearth any such concrete evidence, and in the end it was just, the probe was simply abandoned.
Right. So let me answer the easy question first, Neha, which is whether an impeachment proceeding can be initiated against him. Obviously, it can be by the House because that doesn't take much. It doesn't even need a vote for an impeachment proceeding to be launched. But what will be harder is for them to actually convict, which is a power only the Senate has. I'll come to that a bit later, but this is a political fight. Let's not mistake it for anything else, Neha. This is a fight which actually began under President Donald Trump's, reign. And it occupied a lot of the 2020 election campaign also. Now that's been, carrying on since that time to now, because now we are on the, we are now going to witness another election next year, in November next year, and the campaigns have already begun. And there are indictments that have happened against President Trump. And GOP wants to, put pressure on Democratic Party. And as Mr. Biden, the current president, is their default, candidate for the 2024 elections, obviously they want to, target President Biden. But the fact remains that various inquiries have been done, have been done in this matter, going as far back as 2020. So it's been 3 years, and none of the inquiries has been able to actually pinpoint anything which directly connects President Biden to what they're claiming of allegations of graft or taking money. So there is absolutely zero evidence which anyone has been able to produce. Even Republican, the fiercest of Republican critics, have not been able to produce anything which directly points to President Biden's involvement in any way. So now comes the matter of impeachment and what happens. Let's say if the impeachment motion is passed and it goes to Senate, but Senate is controlled by the Democrats, the 52 versus 48. So it's unlikely that President Biden will be convicted and asked, made to leave his office. I don't think that's going to happen. At the end of it, if no one is able to produce any concrete evidence which suggests that President Biden was directly involved in his son's business and his affairs and was in a position to use his office when he was vice president to basically, help Hunter Biden make monetary gains, then this is going to just die away, Neha. So at the end of it, there are some investigations happening against Hunter Biden also for tax evasion, possession of guns, all those things. So ultimately, if there is nothing which comes against President Biden, what it'll boil down to is the fact that the Biden family is just like any other family in the world. Every family has its problems. Every family has children who create some problems which then parents have to deal with. In this case, the parent happens to be the most powerful man in the world. So I think that is the difference. But unless Republicans are able to throw something at President Biden which sticks to him, I think there is absolutely no danger of him getting convicted, even if he gets impeached, Neha.
Well, clearly, as the election draws closer, the two sides are going to dig up all the dirt that they can on each other. That is very clear. All right, now we want to move on to our next story, which is also from the United States, and it is a very disturbing story. Here's why. This is a story that will actually make your blood boil. Every few days we come across stories of police brutality across America, often stemming from deep-rooted racism. On most such occasions, it is young black men who are at the receiving end, with scores of them having even lost their lives over the years, not because they had committed any crime, but simply because of the color of their skin. However, this racism is not entirely confined to members of the African American community. In an incident that has now come to light, a Seattle police officer exhibited absolutely shocking, disgusting, deeply racist and misogynistic behavior after a tragic incident involving a young Indian woman. An investigation has been launched into the conduct of police union leader, Officer Daniel Orderer, who was captured on his body camera, laughing and making not just highly insensitive but downright obnoxious remarks about the victim. Janvi Kandula, an Indian origin graduate student. On the 23rd of January this year, Janvi, as we said, a 23-year-old graduate student at Northeastern University's Seattle campus, lost her life in a tragic accident involving a Seattle police patrol vehicle. Now, Janvi, a native of the Kurnool district of Andhra Pradesh, was struck by the patrol vehicle while crossing the street in the South Lake Union area. Initially, the officer driving the marked patrol SUV, Officer Kevin Dave, was reported to be travelling at 50 miles per hour. However, a subsequent police investigation revealed that the vehicle was actually travelling at a much higher speed of around 75 miles per hour when it struck the young woman. Subsequently, in a disturbing turn of events, a video recently surfaced captured on Officer Daniel Orderer's body camera where he can be heard discussing the investigation into this accident. In this video, Officer Orderer, who is also the Vice President of the Seattle Police Officers Guild, is heard callously remarking, "She's dead," followed by laughter and referring to Janvi as a regular person. Then, heartlessly, he suggests, "Yeah, just write a check, $11,000. He again bursts into laughter, and right in the end, Orderer says, "She was anyway 26. She had limited value." Yes, you heard that right. That is exactly what this cop said. Even getting her age wrong, not that getting her age right, would have made this remark any less distasteful. This shocking behavior has caused outrage and raised serious questions about the culture within the police department in the United States of America. All right, let's go back to Shri for more on this story. Shri, I don't even know how to react to some of the things that this man said about this young woman who had lost her life under the most tragic circumstances. It shouldn't even matter whether the person who has died is an Indian or an American or an African, their gender, the color of their skin, none of that should matter. But that doesn't seem to be the case here. This cop is laughing away, talking about a tragedy that has snuffed out a young life. He is callously saying, "Just cut a check," and that will be the end of the story. And to make matters far worse, he refers to her age in the most misogynistic manner possible, saying she was 26, she had limited value. Doesn't this man represent absolutely the worst of American policing?
Unfortunately, he does, Neha. This is utterly shocking for anyone to describe a tragic accident in the manner that this police officer has done. And for a policeman who was responsible for investigating the toxicity of the police officer responsible for killing our young girl, this is truly shocking. Now, this is the consistent police high-handedness, their insensitivity, the brutality is one of the reasons why there has been a lot of calls among the liberals in US for defunding the police, where people are saying that we are better off without having a police force than having people who are actually openly, racist or are openly contemptuous of poor people, of people who are of a certain color and even gender. So I think that's very unfortunate. But I would like to imagine that this is, again, limited to a very small part of the police force. This is probably not indicative of the larger society or the police force in America. And the good thing is Seattle has launched an investigation into this. And even the police watchdog, both the police watchdogs have condemned his behavior. And I hope there will be some sort of a justice which is, given to the girl's family who lost her life for no fault of hers. She was walking on pedestrian crossing and this police officer was speeding at 75 miles an hour. And there was no way, this life should have been lost in the first place, Neha. And then to berate it and to make fun of it and to say that this is, a 26-year-old person who has a low value, throw $11,000 check at their face and, it should be end of the matter. This is really, really shameful. I hope, just like the earlier police brutalities gave rise to Black Lives Matter, in the US. I hope it doesn't come to a Brown Lives Matter. We don't have to get to a position where we need a campaign like Brown Lives Matter, because all lives matter. That's the reality. So whether you're black, brown, white, yellow, whatever your color is, every life matters. And as a police personnel, it's your responsibility to stick to your duties, what you're sworn to, which is to protect and serve everyone. So I hope this will lead to some sort of a soul searching and a better outcome, which will justify the death of this young girl, Neha.
One really wonders if the American police have learnt any lessons from the Black Lives Matter movement, which took over not just the United States, but so many different parts of the world. And we don't know what the investigation will eventually reveal, but I have no doubt in my mind that a man who has such a mindset has no business being a cop. He is undoubtedly not just extremely insensitive and obnoxious, he is deeply racist and misogynistic and has no business being in the police force. On that note, Sri, thank you for joining us and sharing your perspective with us on all the top stories on Global Lens tonight.
My pleasure, Neha. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Sri. All right, on that note, let's take a quick break here on Global Lens. Lots more on the other side. Don't go away.